What attracted me to Cosmos? It's an interesting question. I encountered Cosmos sometime around the fundraiser, although I think a bit after it. I sadly did not participate in the fundraiser. And I was primarily attracted by the manner in which the interoperability system which Cosmos proposed, even as early as the white paper, was permissionless. That Cosmos seemed like it was attempting to engender a network of interconnected blockchains without requiring that those blockchains subscribe to a particular ideology, both in terms of technical formats, of how the state machines works, how consensus worked, but also in terms of economic considerations, which tokens were used, how the staking systems were designed. And I thought that was likely to lead to a kind of heterogeneous, resilient, and really interesting blockchain ecosystem, which I wanted to help see realized. Most aligned with the Cosmos vision. I would almost say pluralism or political uncertainty. I think Cosmos intends to facilitate interoperation between different political philosophies, different networks, or different closely connected subgraphs of the Cosmos network may end up, aggregating around different political philosophies, but I think the ideal of Cosmos, certainly my ideal of Cosmos, is that they be allowed to interoperate cohesively, even while retaining their diversity. Pluralism. The idea that multiple political philosophies could be represented in different parts of the Cosmos network. And because the toolset which Cosmos has designed only describes how different parts of the network interact with other parts, each blockchain in the Cosmos network can make its own decisions with regards to the core state machine, the economics, the staking design, etc. Because I think we don't know yet which kinds of designs will succeed and fail in different goals of the broad blockchain project. Some kinds of state machines will be very well suited to particular use cases like currencies or financial contracts or prediction markets or collateralized insurance. Others probably haven't even developed yet. We wouldn't be able to predict what they would be, and so it makes much more sense to allow to specify the minimum required agreement in terms of a standard to connect to other blockchains, to connect to other political philosophies, more broadly articulated, and then allow the chains themselves to diversify in ways that we cannot yet really predict. What's most interesting about the Cosmos Hub governance system, there's no prescribed governance system for the entire Cosmos network, we're just talking about the hub, to me is that it's incredibly, somewhat terrifyingly open-ended. Little is specified about what governance can or cannot do. There is not really yet a sort of constitution, as it were. Maybe there will be in the future. I think that gives governance a wide prerogative to explore different feature sets for the Cosmos Hub, different evolution pathways forward in the state machine, different ways to connect to other chains, other zones as they emerge over IBC. And I'm excited to see what that will turn into.
I think I first found Cosmos when a friend of mine told me about it. And for me, it was the first interoperability protocol that really had the whole image of multiple blockchains and existing blockchains as well with peg zones in mind, and focused on technical excellence and excellent implementation. And since I have a technical background, I started looking into the code, and I really saw that this was an excellent implementation of the concept. And that's what brought me in. And for me, as someone with security expertise, I immediately started to look for an opportunity to get involved, and that was obviously validation. I think the validation itself will not be the core of the business of most nowadays validators. I think that a lot of them are focusing on building projects in the ecosystem because now they have the expertise of how the platform works, they know the community, and they know how to work with it, because validation is eventually going to be commoditized. There's going to be actors that work on this commoditization by providing low-order services. There's going to be others that build applications on top of the stack. So I think that's where the businesses will go. At the point where differences between validators will become really just extremely small, I think it's easy for staking derivatives to start and abstract that kind of complicated staking experience at the moment. It's getting more and more simple, but the staking derivative is the most simple way of getting involved in staking, getting exposure to the yields and to the underlying platform without actually having to interact with it. Basically, the absolute commoditization and perfect user experience. It's the ultimate user experience because you aren't exposed to having to interface with the chain anymore. You do not have to pick, you do not have to rebar and redelegate. So it's perfect user experience. I think in the end, it's gonna be what we know as DeFi at the moment. We've got all kind of interesting instruments being built, with, for example, Kava Labs building a Maker equivalent. And I see a lot of these kind of projects in the Cosmos ecosystem because the Cosmos Hub as a way of transferring assets between chains is perfect for the decentralized finance vision. But I also in the longer term see more traditional financial products like bonds being built on top of these staking assets. I think that yes, people will not be as informed as they have to be at the moment to interact with the system in like the course of implementing this user experience. I see this as a natural development because what we have at the moment are a lot of early adopters, people that have been interested in Cosmos for a long time or have to dig deep in order to use it at all. And I think that's going to change with more people focusing on speculation and just using applications on top of the, built on top of the Cosmos SDK and in the Interchain. So I think actual understanding of the system is going to be less, but also risk is going to be less because the systems automate risk management, etc.
So the main thing we're focusing on right now is expanding the security and capabilities of the Cosmos network to more environments. So that includes networks like other blockchain networks, it includes other languages, it includes additional protocols, so integrating with other kinds of protocols like the Agoric team's protocols. It includes additional devices to be able to run on mobile and different browsers, extensions, and so on. So really focused on expanding the security and capabilities to as many environments as possible so that no one has an excuse to not be able to develop as part of the Cosmos network because they don't have the tooling for it. So an RFP is a request for proposals. And the foundation runs a very general purpose granting program. We have our mandate to pursue and support open decentralized networks, both research and development. It is quite broad. And we accept proposals for all kinds of things. Anything you think is interesting that might relate to Cosmos or to larger open decentralized networks, we're interested in. But because we have more strategic objectives in the short term, we've made a more focused request for proposals, an RFP, for proposals to address particular strategic initiatives. And so those include things like improving the guarantees we get from our proof of stake mechanism. So that's the first RFP. The second is for expanding to connect with additional networks like Ethereum, like Bitcoin. So that means things like building bridges, like pegs directly to them, but also things like Ethermint and maybe a Bitcoin zone and stuff like that, so that you can use the state machines from those networks within the Cosmos network. The third RFP is to expand the number of languages, the number of programming languages for which there are mature frameworks for building applications as part of the Cosmos network. And finally, the last one is to increase the number of options there are for secure signing, both as users signing transactions and as validators signing votes and proposals in the consensus. Well, Icarus just presented downstairs, so it was a really wonderful presentation. So that's kind of hot on my mind. And what they're doing is starting to apply some techniques from machine learning, starting with very simple things, but already getting great results, to improve the test coverage of the Cosmos SDK based blockchain. So the Cosmos SDK comes with a simulator. It's kind of like a simple, integration test style simulation framework. And what they're doing is starting to apply machine learning to really take that thing to the next level and to make sure it gets as much coverage as possible to really find all the edge cases and boundaries where there might be hidden lurking bugs. So that's been a really promising one. Ecosystem compatible chains, yeah. So this is really what, there's a few sides of this. Part of it is more client support for basically Tendermint based chains for the Tendermint RPC, more tooling for deploying Tendermint based chains. So for instance, yesterday, Žarko was talking about the research project, and Greg, who's running infrastructure at the foundation, was talking about some of the work they've been doing on enabling reproducible deployments of Tendermint-based chains for testing and benchmarks, so that anyone who has some kind of Tendermint-based chain can set up a wide area network deployment across multiple data centers across the world, run a certain set of tests against them, get results, publish those results in a way that others can exactly reproduce the experiment, right? And that's both super beneficial for research projects, but also for developers, working on their deployment infrastructure and moving towards, their mainnets. And that's kind of on the deployment side. On the application side, actually building these applications, what we're looking to, one of the main RFPs is to expand the number of languages for which there are rich, mature frameworks for building applications in. So, right now we have Go, Cosmos SDK. We have Lotion in JavaScript. We also have the Agoric team building in JavaScript, though they're currently integrating with the SDK. We're talking to teams about building frameworks in Haskell, so that might yield some nice mature results relatively soon, probably later this year. And we're looking to expand into all the other major popular languages as well, except for C and C++. We try to be very diligent with this process, very thoughtful and strategic, and that means that to some extent we're slow. So we're trying to do things on roughly a quarterly cadence. So grant program opens, applications come in, and we try to kind of process them in batches, roughly on a quarterly basis. And the way the process works, and this is all laid out on the website, on the new website that just went up, and on the related GitHub repo, where basically, it's typically best to have some kind of conversation with the team before they even write an application, just to get some kind of understanding of where the alignment is and what it would be best to write the application for. Because the application is non-trivial, we do ask for a good amount of information. Once that comes in, we'll look at it. It should be thoughtful, well-formed. There should be a good budget in there that explains what the funds are going to be used for and why. And also, ideally, what success looks like for the project, from the perspective of the applicant, right? So that we understand, once we fund the thing, what does it look like if this thing succeeds, and how could we use that to kind of iterate on our own process to know, when a similar project proposes something next time, how can we learn from previous ones and apply those learnings? And so, we do a bunch of review like that, and then we have usually a number of calls with the applicant to kind of sort things out a little more. Get some more clarity on some of the deliverables, timelines, potentially find synergies with other applicants, so that maybe something they propose is going to be handled by someone else. So really make sure there's kind of a cooperative thing happening in the larger ecosystem. And then we'll talk to other stakeholders in the ecosystem. Other people help kind of review, people that are closer to the product, or some of the engineers or validators or whatever that the project might be relevant to, get their input a little bit, do a lot of back and forth, and then finally once there's kind of agreement that we want to move through with this, then the final thing to do is make the proposal to the Foundation Council, and then once that's approved, we establish an agreement, and it's off to the races. This is the first really Cosmos-focused conference, and it's an amazing opportunity for this epic community to come together after years of building this thing and building in so many different directions, and there's been so much innovation and so much happening, and we've really together pushed the boundaries in computer science and in blockchains and in engineering and even in research and some in economics and so on. And we've invented a new business model in terms of proof of stake, and so there's a lot of really exciting things happening, and this is really an opportunity for there's over 70 representatives from over 70 different organizations here coming together to really, have these conversations in person, understand, where everyone's at, and how we can further synergize things and, take this to the next level. I mean, we had a successful launch a few months ago. That was totally the result of how mature the community is. It's not something that we could have really done on our own. We didn't really have any role. Neither the foundation or AIB really played a leading role in the launch. And so this was all the hard work of the community, and to kind of celebrate that here and show how amazing everything is going, and also to start to look forward to all the amazing work we have to do in the future, and to kind of ground all that, and hopefully we do this on a yearly basis.
Berlin has I actually feel really strongly about the Berlin community. I founded ETHBerlin here, and then later the Department of Decentralization, which is actually becoming a really cool thing in many different aspects. And this wouldn't have been possible without the like kind of selfless collaboration spirit that goes on in the Berlin blockchain scene. I think that this is by far the most friendliest community that I have been in. It's really powerful that, working for a blockchain project, as I also working for Golem, it's really, really powerful that whenever I need help or whenever I'm stuck with something, even if it's like a technical post, I can just go to the kitchen here at the co-working area and begin to ask questions, and someone will always help me, So, and someone will have great ideas as well. So, keeping an open door is also really productive here, because people actually do propose their ideas. You can integrate them into your practice, into your projects. And, I think that, this is not really possible in other blockchain communities around, because they're more driven to increasing their own silo. And here we are more about cementing the narrative that actually Berlin is the blockchain hub for Europe, and maybe more in the future. Right, so that varies, because sometimes, like when it's high season for an event, we get people from all sorts of projects here. So you can have people from the Ethereum Foundation, you can have people from libp2p, IPFS, you can have people from, the usual suspects that live here. So that's Golem, Raiden, Gnosis, Cosmos, of course. The people at 0x are here too. A while ago we also had like a big cohort from Binance Labs, so there was a lot of interesting people, because that was the incubator part. So it really varies, but there's always someone interesting and from a new project to come into the space. And it's also because we do host flex desks for people to actually come and share their findings and just connect with everyone. So it's really a flowing thing. Right. So the Department of Decentralization began primarily as a hackathon based on Ethereum. And then throughout the process of organizing the whole hackathon, and after my own experience by working on an interchain protocol such as Polkadot, I was never fully sold with the fact that we should be only Ethereum. So when the first hackathon ended, actually, we decided to found an entity, and an ETH-based entity was incredibly restricted for us, not because Ethereum is not cool, but because there's a lot of things to explore. So the current direction is going much more into agnosticism, into chain agnosticism than before, including the hackathon, even though the name is ETHBerlin again, because we think it's a legacy by now. We're having ETC people coming in, we're having libp2p people coming in as well, IPFS, we're having people from Cosmos as well, and Tendermint in the DoD helping out every single day. So so basically we are going more into agnosticism in every single step that we take. So ETHBerlin is one thing, it's the hackathon, it's going to be agnostic, so we invite all projects to actually take part, put their bounties, and come and teach people about what they're doing, because it's really exciting for us also to learn. But then, like the wider Department of Decentralization, it's running a series of pilots, and for example, one of them was actually, it's a paper on blockchain and art, and that paper should kick off the further discussion on the current state of the intersection of these two disciplines. And basically we approached that paper not only from the typical Ethereum related kind of angle, but we started researching how people use blockchain and cryptocurrencies as a medium for their practice, not only as a marketplace. So we're going agnostic on every sense. Right now, our next project in terms of DoD as well, it's actually doing a second report that's called True Interoperability. And this report will feature at least 50 interviews with people, where we just ask them a sort of a set of like 5 questions that can be either very technical or esoteric. It depends on who is answering actually, and then trying to convey what's actually the meaning of this new interoperable era that we are actually starting to walk, because the first protocol is live now, and then more will come. So it's very tricky to say it right now, right? Because so we only have one fully interoperable protocol out, and the rest are either about to launch or are doing research. So it's very, very hard to say how the community is going to react. Like for example, from the investor side, from Ethereum, we know that there is a little bit of a reluctancy to be open to interoperability, but it's just the way that it's just the way that it is, because they also have first mover advantage. They were the first very open and expressive protocol to be live, so it's understandable. I think that actually, in the future, I'm really not sure how is it going to go. I'm not even sure that actually, some of the projects will succeed, technically speaking, because you never know with experimental technologies, obviously. But what I'm sure of is that actually, if we don't educate the stakeholders, the investors, we won't get anywhere, because we will get into a lot of friction in terms of deciding for a protocol to be more open towards these new interoperable chains, and then the more general audience thinking that their competitors, really, we don't know how the landscape is going to be in a year. So it's step by step and pushing on education right now.
Tendermint is, what I think is most important to work on right now is sort of the future of the staking economy on top of Cosmos. So we've had this bootstrap phase of the Cosmos economy going on for the last few weeks, where the network is live, people are staking atoms, delegation relationships are forming, there are validators operating, we're seeing all these validators also find new networks to stake on, so sort of this whole proof of stake economy is forming. And so it seems to me that okay, as this bootstrap phase sort of starts to come to an end, as staking participation in the network starts to exceed 60%, we can consider the bootstrapping of the network successful, but now we have to figure out how to actually make these validators sort of successful businesses. So there are a bunch of things that we as Cosmos could do together to create new opportunities for the validators. A bunch of them rely on IBC. So once the inter-blockchain communication layer, which is really not a research effort at this point, it's mostly an engineering and specification effort, is done, then we can look at sort of these cross-chain collateralization, cross-chain staking models as potential future directions. We are also looking at the sort of photon art project as something that the Cosmos Hub community might want to do, which is the issuance of a new token, largely distributed to some, largely gifted as to participants in a large-scale art project, rather than sold or distributed through any sort of token sale. So what are the most interesting projects launching on top of Cosmos? I've been finding what's happening with Terra to be particularly interesting. Terra is doing a couple of things that are sort of unique and different. One is they're doing a network that is entirely driven by fee revenue. So transaction fees pay for the entire operation of the network. The second thing is they're doing something that's really oriented towards the payments space. It's going to be interesting to see how that goes. It's also going to be interesting to see how that scales. And then the other piece that's interesting is that they're asking validators to perform this new function, which is running a price oracle. The other thing I'm really excited about is the software for running what is essentially an Ethereum oracle as a Cosmos validator set is nearing completion. And I'm kind of excited to see what applications emerge from that. I guess what's very exciting to me about IBC is that IBC makes the Cosmos ecosystem permissionless. So right now, functionally this is the Cosmos hub, and any individual blockchain on Cosmos is run by its governance, and the governance decides what applications, what protocols, etc. Once we have IBC, this whole network becomes a permissionless mechanism for innovation. You know, people can start new zones. They might start zones which just have a single validator. Those validators connect by IBC. Probably nobody will want to ever send any significant amount of value to those individual zones, but everybody can just experiment. And so I expect that the number of experiments and the that we see in the Cosmos Hub will just grow in the sort of Cosmos Hub ecosystem, will expand like sort of exponentially once we have IBC. Because you can like basically spin up a Cosmos SDK blockchain that runs any protocol that supports any sort of application, and spin it up, connect it to an IBC channel, and it can start operating on some amount of value, and then grow somewhat organically from there. What is Cosmos to me? So Cosmos to me is the network of blockchains that is coming up based on this IBC concept. You know, we've had to do all of this work on proof of stake, on Tendermint, on the Cosmos SDK to get to finally building IBC. I think IBC is the sort of true value of Cosmos, and I think that getting IBC out there will sort of massively expand the sort of next generation of blockchains by allowing them to all interop. So the question is more like, what isn't Cosmos? Ideally, Cosmos should subsume the entire world of blockchains and the entire world of finance. I imagine that in something like 20 to 40 years, most financial transactions, and perhaps maybe most transactions, will be done using a blockchain at some layer of the system. But like blockchains will coordinate most forms of capital allocation. We will have new forms of organizational structure that are powered by these secure computers. We will have new forms of markets. All of these things will be managed by, will come into existence because of the foundations of blockchains that we're laying today. Probably the most exciting thing about this conference has been how much less relevant I am and like critical I am to this community. Like people meet each other, they already know each other, they've met each other online, they've interacted with each other online, they've worked together on the Cosmos Hub together, and they all get to interact, and I don't have to be everywhere or do everything. You know, I just get to sit back and just enjoy being part of the community. You know, it took us so much energy sort of bootstrapping this community, but it seems to have a momentum of its own now. The Cosmos community, I think, are the people who've understood and internalized the vision of this system, and are willing to give that system their time and attention. And that's sort of what is defined. So this is a community of people who have sort of voluntarily chosen to work together and voluntarily chosen to attach their fates together. And sort of that's what characterizes this community.
So the roadmap of Agoric and Cosmos have a lot of points of alignment. We're building our testnet on Cosmos SDK and on Tendermint, and that will be available shortly. We've also partnered with them and All in Bits to build IBC. So we're participating in the specifications of that, we're participating in the implementation of that, and we will certainly be leveraging that as a core part of our stack. And so, and now of course we've gotten introduced to the Cosmos community, the validators, the other people working on zones and so forth. And so that future is interesting and exciting, and we're going to continue to learn more about it. The thing that attracted me about the Cosmos community is first, the core team are really smart, looking at solving interesting, hard problems that we all think are important, and really easy to work with, really straightforward, really easy to understand problems, deal with technical challenges, and so forth. The extended Cosmos community that's built up around that is people that share a lot of that vision, but also have a lot of diverse perspectives on it, challenges that they're doing, ways that they're going to use it that are novel and interesting, and content that they brought themselves. And so, you know, that's sort of exciting about the community is both the intellectual alignment and value understanding, the ability to deliver something that they all need and want to use, and the ability to learn from all these people from these different perspectives.
So the future of staking for me is really about just a much more efficient and dynamic way of like organizing these systems and these blockchains, right? In the past with proof of work, we relied on these external things, right? On electricity and energy. So in a way, the constraint on the speed of innovation was slowed down by things like, you know, the upgrades, production lines and supply chains and all of these real world non-digital things. And then with proof of stake, basically we're internalizing all of the variables that determine how these systems function, so we can just innovate like so much faster. So I think proof of stake is really the future of collaboration, and it's kind of bringing it into the fully digital realm, you know, from proof of work, which still had this kind of old world tie. So that's kind of how I think about proof of stake, and of course it ties into the future of collaboration, which I think is what blockchains are about. Yeah, so I've been working in some way, kind of like Tendermint related since 2015, so like 4 years. And I've been involved in Cosmos for a long time as well. And this is the first time that it's really a community event with so many different people coming together, and it's incredibly exciting just to see how this ecosystem has grown so much, and it's just all the great people and great projects. So that's, I think, super exciting for me. I see like an incredible amount of momentum in the Cosmos ecosystem. There's so many great projects that, you know, are approaching us consistently, you know, building Cosmos SDK and on Tendermint, and it just gets more and more and more, and it feels like at an ever increasing rate. So, and then of course with IBC, there's like an incredibly exciting technology that's being developed. And, you know, I think in the next year, we'll also see that really kind of come forth. And so I think actually this vision of the Internet of Blockchain that was kind of laid out in the Cosmos white paper, you know, it's starting to happen.
So we created the Open Money Initiative as a way to research and provide insights into the broader crypto community, into places that are experiencing monetary collapse or economic trouble. They manifest themselves in the forms of hyperinflation or capital controls. And Venezuela is obviously the one that's most in the news right now, and the one that's closest to my heart because I'm from Venezuela. And we have the idea that perhaps access to digital money and not only cryptocurrency, but in general, have an understanding how people use money and the hacks that they use, the way that they unexpectedly save money when the odds are stacked against them, or the way that they share accounts with family members, or the way that they can stay afloat in the face of extreme devaluation. These insights can provide a way for product companies and even perhaps protocol teams working on crypto products or crypto projects so that they can design the money systems that are more geared towards towards these populations, because as you mentioned, I don't think we're going to be seeing the displacement of the euro or the dollar anytime soon, but I do think that and we've seen that in Venezuela people are using literally anything else as money. They still need to use the local currency, the Bolivar, because it's the most widespread money, but people are increasingly using dollars in cash. They're using Colombian pesos near the border, and some are using Bitcoin too. Yeah, so we are grateful to the Interchain Foundation for funding our work. We did an initial study, and it's very user-focused, so it's very human-centered. We spoke to people for long periods. We did some diary studies, some ethnographic interviews. And as of today, of course, Cosmos has very little to do with what's going on directly in Venezuela. But I think it's very important for people to be working on protocols and to be working on products built on top of these protocols that allow for the transfer of money safely and openly. Like if you can have access to this kind of open money, then you can potentially change the course of the next Venezuela, if and when it happens.
Okay, yeah. So I think part of our vision for e-money in the context of Cosmos is at some point in time you won't really need a bank account unless you're borrowing money. So we see the potential for having a network account widely available for everybody, regardless of where they live or how much money they have, as a big, very interesting prospect of Cosmos. And we see Cosmos Hub as a great alternative to the existing payment infrastructure. So we see a future where you can save up money, a network account, in your currency of choice, and you can move that money around freely with minimum friction. And, yeah, that's yeah. So basically, if you compare it to the existing financial infrastructure, so I'm from Denmark, where we have a quite efficient banking infrastructure. So you can do immediate payments with no fees. But I spent 2 years in the US and quickly learned that there's no such thing as like immediate payments or zero fees. So with minimum friction, I mean like almost immediately settled, immediate finality, and with fees that are very low compared to what we know today. So yeah. So what brings me here to Berlin, to the Interchain Conversations, is basically the community, the ability to meet up with potential validators for our project, and also other partners, just such as wallet providers, and also to stay up to date on the development on IBC. We're still looking forward to that happening, but yeah, so it's a great opportunity to come here. And yeah.
Staking itself, there's at least from a validator's point of view, people will need to figure out business models just outside of purely earning, sustaining through the block rewards that are coming out through inflation. And so from a validator's point of view, I believe there's a lot more experimentation that needs to happen regarding their business models. From the coin holder's point of view, I believe there's still not a lot of awareness. Cosmos has done wonderfully regarding the staking ratio. There's about like 60-70% of the entire atoms locked up, which is great. I think this sort of awareness regarding staking needs to be more widespread, and so education is going to be also a huge part for staking. The current business model of stake.fish comes in 2 phases. The first phase is we're trying to add secure validators as much as possible. Cosmos is definitely one of the more prominent chains that we've seen, and we've entered into Cosmos from early on, and we've been constantly improving, and we believe we have the security feature stack figured out for Cosmos validators, and we want to sort of bring that to other chains as well. The second phase is trying to figure out what sort of infrastructure, what sort of tools do stakers and projects need. We're going to try to build that up, and then try to provide value not only to the projects themselves, but community members and developers alike who want to build on Cosmos or any sort of POS chains. Cosmos has been our entry point, primarily because Cosmos has a very well thought out proof of stake system, in our opinion. Of course, there is still a lot of experimentation and optimization that needs to happen regarding the proof of stake model. There needs to be some parameters that might need to be tweaked, but so far Cosmos has proven to have a lot of the proof of stake mechanisms figured out, and so we foresaw that, and we believe Cosmos had at least the majority of proof of stake figured out, and so that's why we decided to make a big entry into Cosmos ecosystem. I came to the Interchain Conversations because I wanted to see firsthand what the developers in the Cosmos ecosystem are building. That was the biggest motivation. There's a bunch of projects we met that wanted to spin up zones on the Cosmos Hub, and we're very excited to talk with them and help them figure out how we could help them spin up zones in a more sustainable manner. And being here, I'm utterly shocked. There's no other way to put it, by how passionate the developers are, how passionate other validators are on trying to help these zones out, and then just meeting the entire Tendermint team, all InBits team, the Interchain team, it seems like they're also really putting their heads down and getting to work on trying to figure out IBC and figure out what's next for the Cosmos Hub.
The business decision of any wallet, I think, should be, because it's a really uncertain future in all of the blockchain world, to look into cross-chain functionality, right? And Cosmos is like one of the biggest projects and got the best future to implement something working in the near term. And that's basically why we implement it. And then we also, I think we're working close together already to bring something usable, to bring feedback from the early users, and then just work together sort of on how should the SDK should look like, and like just exchange feature requests and feedback in general. I think right now it's really at the start of this this discussion about, well, this discussion is getting serious right now about implementing this cross-chain functionalities, right? And till now it was all about talking visions and so on, and right now it's the first demos we can show and the first developers we can talk to who actually implement something comparable to what we're implementing, right? But they did it in different ways. So it's all about like getting together like we would do in other blockchain environments and just exchanging about our learnings and experiences. Yeah. And it's just, it feels really exciting because like it's really the first time this happens, right? It's like something completely new, and I noticed it that not a lot of people I met here I met before at the Ethereum conference. It's like it's a new set of people, sort of, so to speak, right? It's like this new technology bringing new people in. Yeah.
The philosophy that I think the Cosmos project embodies is that of voluntarism. So it's very closely classical liberal in that the concept of sovereign chains and giving the individual the freedom of choice and not to lock them into any single platform is very freeing. It's very liberating, and it's intelligent. The Cosmos community and the Cosmos stack has a lot to be desired in that there's a lot of tooling that's needed to be built in order for the ecosystem to be rich and really easy to build on. And so I'm really looking forward to the scaffolding and bootstrapping mechanisms involved that is going to help developers build their chains ever easier. And so the biggest criticism that people have about Cosmos is that they need to bootstrap their own security, but I would argue that the year of work that was put into the validator working group and getting that knowledge base based on community expertise is really valuable, and that's a pool of resource that is existing that application developers could tap into immediately. And so that's something that's I look forward to ever more in the ecosystem as we build out more staking tooling, monitoring tools, making it ever easier for application developers to build their own chains and realize the vision of the Internet of blockchains. The Cosmos technology stack is extremely modular, and they interact with each other in dynamic ways. And I would argue that this is sort of an analog to the Cosmos community, because every player in the Cosmos community is extremely independent. They have their own wants and needs, and yet somehow they come into this ecosystem. They're able to get what they want out of it, and they're able to, in turn, provide services that someone else needs. And so that interplay is the coordination mechanism that is the dream.
The progress of the SDK and where it's going essentially, I believe, boils down to two kind of main ideas. Essentially, we want to kind of create an environment, foster an environment where we allow developers to really kind of plug and play and choose their modules. So for example, we provide developers with the ability to plug and play staking, governance, things like liquid democracy, but those that may not suit all applications. So what we see the SDK progressing towards is more of a modular kind of tool, a suite for developers to use. So for example, if they don't like the way that auth works, for example, the way that governance works, they can kind of plug and play different aspects of those modules to suit their needs. I think one great example of that is the recent change to governance where we allow parameter change proposals. So for example, I think Sunny actually in his project with the SICA DAO allows him, with this new recent change, to implement such a DAO, to essentially kind of distribute funds and various things to his delegates. The SDK is a core component to enable interoperability amongst blockchain applications because it gives developers and the end users the ability to essentially compose their own applications, primarily using IBC. So through IBC, developers have the ability to essentially create peg zones or other applications and amongst other hubs. Can I redo that one? Yeah. Okay. So the SDK is a core component to enable interoperability amongst blockchain applications because it allows developers to essentially pick and choose different modules through IBC to interoperate amongst one another. So for example, various peg zones may be created amongst various hubs to interoperate. So for example, a good example would be a DEX through IBC. So I believe the SDK is a core component to enable blockchain interoperability because, as we well know, the SDK is extremely modular in allowing developers to pick and choose various modules to build their own application, and one such module is the IBC module. And through the IBC module, we essentially have a whole suite of tools to enable interoperability. This allows us to create things like light client proofs amongst various applications. We can create DEXs, we can have different peg zones interoperating with one another.
The end state of Tendermint BFT is a state where projects could easily use Tendermint for different kinds of applications. So right now there are a lot of projects which are creating basically forks of Tendermint and modifying it and adding like some custom features like custom reactors, adding like BLS signatures, random generators. And we want Tendermint to be flexible enough and modular enough, even though it's in a good shape right now, it could be improved. So when it reaches the kind of the state where, it's very easy to like modify it, to add new features without forking the project. Yeah, and Tendermint, so what's happening right now is Tendermint gaining more adoption. It is becoming more mature, obviously. Like I've been with the project for past 2.5 years, and what I'm seeing is that a lot of people are starting to use it a lot. By a lot, I mean like a lot. And I'm very excited. So from the user perspective, like in the beginning, we had a lot of what I would say like junior, like just enthusiasts, I would say. So like people which who may not know what the distributed system is or like many aspects of it, but who just wanted to play with it. And now I'm starting to see the shift from this kind of not junior enthusiasts to mature companies choosing Tendermint for its qualities like fast finality, speed, understandability. So it's like very easy to understand, which is important if you're going to use it as a core component of your software.